Warning, this video is full of spoilers for Deadpool 2, but there's a good chance you've already had the main thing I'm going to be talking about spoiled for you in the trailers. Either way, don't watch this video if you want to go into Deadpool 2 completely fresh. Once you have seen it, come back and watch this video. So, now I don't want to lose you in the first minute, so let's start with the basics. This is better than this. Seeing a decent looking Juggernaut at all is cool, especially since Mickey Mouse is going to snap his fingers very soon and wipe this whole continuity from existence. But, and hear me out, I don't think Juggernaut was the best choice for that role. Now, I don't think Juggernaut ruined the movie or anything like that. I liked him enough. I just don't think he added much to the movie. And you're probably thinking, so what? He was pretty good. I like Juggernaut, and you're not wrong. But I would argue there is another X-Man villain who can do pretty much every single thing the Juggernaut does in this movie, and he would do each thing better than the Juggernaut does. He fits in perfectly. He would have made a more interesting fight, he would have opened up a ton of new humor, and he would have changed the dynamic of the third act in an important way. So, if I am making one change to Deadpool 2, it's this. The villain Russell befriends in the icebox, and later teams up with to attack the orphanage, should not be the Juggernaut, but another X-Man villain known as Blob. If you haven't heard of him before, Fred Dukes is a staple of the X-Men's Rogues Gallery. He appeared in the third issue of the X-Men. Ever. That's right. The comics go Magneto, Vanisher, I know, right? And then Blob. He shows up in the X-Men comics before Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus, Mystique, and every other member of the Brotherhood of Mutants outside of Magneto. He's that old. And he's been in the movies before, briefly and stupidly. He is Wolverine's teammate in X-Men Origins Wolverine, and then he gains a lot of weight and makes Wolverine box him for information because this movie is a video game. Just kidding. They made a video game of this movie, and it's way better than the movie. Blob can also be seen getting carted away after being killed by Angel in X-Men Apocalypse. But he's never really worked in these movies. Unlike fellow Brotherhooders, Sabretooth, Mystique, Toad, Pyro, and Quicksilver. But I think Blob would have been perfect here. So perfect, I honestly think it's possible that Blob was the villain in an early draft of the script, but he got replaced. So, I want to talk you through what this alternate version of Deadpool 2 would look like, and touch on some specific reasons I think Blob fits way better into this movie than Juggernaut. So we can start at the Breakout. Deadpool is thrown from the icebox during his fight with Cable and formulates a plan to rescue Russell. Meanwhile, Russell, in an attempt to survive at the icebox without Wade, sneaks into the restricted zone of the icebox where the biggest, baddest guy is being held. Russell discovers an empty room with a giant door. Russell approaches the door and, as a show of good faith, slides his tray of food through the slot in the door. This is how it goes in the movie, and it's pretty nitpicky, but in the comics, the Juggernaut doesn't eat, he doesn't breathe or do anything like that, he just is. Blob, on the other hand, does eat. Russell offering his new friend food makes a lot more sense with Blob than with Juggernaut. Blob eats the food as he and Russell talk. In the original version of the movie, Russell just tells Juggernaut that it's lonely at the top, and that together Russell and the Juggernaut can make the whole world their bitch. There isn't much there, it's just Russell saying, you're bad, I'm bad, let's escape and do bad things. With Blob, we can use this moment to explore Russell's motivations a little more. Get at why he feels the way he does. See, Russell wants to be accepted, but so far, everyone's told him that he doesn't belong. The orphanage tortured Russell because he was a mutant. Wade says that he doesn't want anything to do with Russell during the fight with Cable because Russell's too clingy. And in the jail cell, Russell tells Wade that he wanted to be a superhero, but he couldn't because there aren't plus-sized superheroes. Russell has always been an outsider, so it would make sense for him to bond with his new partner over not fitting in. There really isn't anything outsider about Juggernaut. He's big and strong, not really known for his feelings. Blob, on the other hand, is pure outsider. He can commiserate with Russell over not fitting in and being bullied because of his appearance. And then Blob offers Russell an alternative. If Russell manages to free Blob, Blob will help Russell get revenge on the headmaster. And this isn't Blob taking advantage of Russell just so he can escape. Blob legitimately wants to team up with Russell and help Russell kill the people who tormented him. They have a real connection. And this is the first time a character has wanted to team up with Russell. So Russell immediately agrees. He's getting everything he wants. A friend, a partner, and revenge. So Russell, Blob, and the other prisoners are being transported in the caravan. Russell gets free and frees Blob. Once Blob gets his powers back, he jumps in the air and ground pounds the caravan, crashing it instantly. Both Juggernaut and Blob should be able to crash the van, but it's way more in line with Blob's power set. Juggernaut crashes the van because he's really strong and he's able to punch the road underneath the van, but Blob crashes the van because he is literally immovable. That's his mutant power, and it's super easy to understand. Outside of characters like the Hulk, no one but the Blob can move the Blob. So Blob emerges from the crashed van, and now Deadpool's reaction to Blob is completely different from his reaction to Juggernaut. Deadpool is going to do what he always does and start cracking jokes. Domino sees Blob and says, "What is that?" Deadpool, "Oh my god, it's the Blob." "It's just Blob." "Oh my god, I'm so glad to meet you. I've been waiting for this forever." Deadpool whips out a notepad. "You make E Honda look like E Smart Car." Domino, "Wade." Deadpool, "You make Jabba the Hutt look like Jabba the Shed." Domino, "Wade." Deadpool, "You make Fat Albert look like, you know what? I'm gonna skip this one." "Wade, I heard what you said to him. You think we're jokes." "Oh, that's not what I meant. Come on, kid, we gotta get out of here." "No, I'm staying with Blob. I'm going to get my revenge." "You're not the revenge type. Take it from a friend." "Friend? You're not my friend. When you were sick at the prison, I tried to help you, and you said you didn't want anything to do with me. Now you're making fun of my real friend? You're just another bully." Then Russell and Blob leave. Domino scoops up Deadpool and they walk home. On the walk, Domino talks to Deadpool. "You know, when I was a kid, I had this birthmark, and everyone would tease me. It got to me. You probably don't understand that because you've looked like Ryan Gosling your whole life." Reynolds, actually. Oh, I always get them mixed up. Which one won the Golden Globe last year? Gosling. Reynolds was nominated. I can't remember what for, but I get your point. So Deadpool regrows his limbs, teams up with Cable and Domino, and goes to stop Russell. They meet Blob and Russell at the orphanage, and Blob says, "Go ahead, kid. I'll stop them." Deadpool's a little more civil. "All right, Dukes, listen. I'm sorry about what I said back there. I shouldn't make fun of you or your clumpiness." Domino gives Deadpool a glare. "Last one. Now, let us get to the kid." "Not gonna happen. You want to get to him, you gotta go through me." "Well, if you say so, normal person." Deadpool lunges at Blob, but he bounces off of Blob's stomach. Then he takes out his katanas and tries to slice Blob's stomach, but the katanas bounce off too. Then Blob picks up Deadpool and tosses him into the parking lot. Cable says, "We're running out of time," and turns his gun up to 11. He fires at Blob, who absorbs the shot. Blob smiles. Cable says, "Fuck," and the blast from Cable's gun is redirected back at Cable, knocking him in the air. Domino tries shooting Blob with their machine guns, but those don't work either. One of the reasons I like Blob more than Juggernaut is that I think Juggernaut's CGI looked a bit rubbery, and I don't fault anyone working on the movie. They have a tiny budget compared to movies like Infinity War, so they can't afford to make the most realistic CGI characters. They honestly did a really great job. But the nice thing about Blob is he's supposed to look rubbery. He's a big mountain of human jelly. I think Blob would have looked like a really excellent Blob, whereas Juggernaut looked like a pretty good Juggernaut. So Colossus and Negasonic show up to the fight. This distracts Blob, who says he always wanted to fight a real X-Man. Deadpool says that he's an X-Man, and that kid from earlier pops his head out of the window and says, "Don't listen to him, he's a trainee." Deadpool looks defeated and said, "Why is nobody torturing this kid?" Colossus and Negasonic's arrival allows Deadpool, Cable, and Domino to sneak past Blob into the orphanage. Negasonic is pretty much useless here since Blob can reflect Negasonic's energy back at her. That leaves Colossus, who doesn't fare much better. He tries punching Blob square in the chest, but Blob contracts his chest and sucks Colossus's hand into Blob's fat. Colossus makes a face. Ugh. Then Blob spits Colossus out, tossing him through the air. So this fight is similar to the Juggernaut fight. Blob and Colossus trade blows, but eventually Blob knocks Colossus out. Then Blob taunts Colossus, "You think you're so tough? You can't move the Blob." This is when Colossus remembers what Wade told him about playing dirty, and Colossus has an idea. Colossus grabs the spike from the fence, balls it up in his fist, and gives Blob the Johnny Cage special, a punch right between the legs. This causes Blob to jump in the air, which breaks his connection to the ground, and leaves him vulnerable to a blast from Negasonic that sends Blob flying. This fight is simple. The dynamic shifts in a natural way. Blob has a huge advantage over Colossus. They trade blows. Colossus changes his tactics based on Wade's advice and exploits Blob's one weakness. I would say the Juggernaut fight is pretty messy for a couple of reasons, and this is really nitpicky, not unlike my podcast, Mostly Nitpicking. Subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcasts. But anyway, one of my biggest problems with this movie's Juggernaut is that we don't really get into how he works. We don't set up a clear power set for Juggernaut or an exploitable weakness with which to end the fight. It seems like the movie just goes, "All right, well, we gotta gotta get to the end of the movie, so let's just have Colossus shove a power line up his butt. Sound good, everybody? Lunch? And while it's kind of funny, I think this Blob ending would be both funny and satisfying. This Blob fight is also less exciting, which is a good thing. Stay with me. We have three things going on during the finale. Domino is saving the orphans, Colossus is fighting Juggernaut, and Deadpool and Cable are trying to stop/save Russell. Ideally, they're all equally exciting, but we should be most concerned with the Deadpool Cable Russell confrontation. It's the emotional core of the movie and what we've been building to the entire time. Unfortunately, concurrently, one of the most exciting X-Men villains is beating Colossus to death, and to a longtime X-Men fan, that takes priority. Think of it this way. It would be cool to see Doctor Doom in the MCU, but if Doctor Doom just showed up at the middle of Civil War, kind of out of nowhere, and fought Ant-Man while the rest of the plot happened elsewhere, it would draw focus from the most important part of the story. Yeah, it's cool, but balance matters. And that's because, in my opinion, Juggernaut works best as a solo act. He should be the most important part of the movie. He isn't an effective bit player. Blob, on the other hand, is a great team member. He's almost always part of the Brotherhood, Magneto's team of evil mutants. Blob creates a more balanced finale since his appearance isn't as exciting. Blob is also a lot weaker than the Juggernaut, which is also good. So back to the Ant-Man example. Imagine if Doctor Doom finally showed up in the MCU, he fought Ant-Man, and lost. Kind of a letdown. After all, Doctor Doom is supposed to be the big boss, able to take down pretty much anybody, and in this movie, he gets it handed to him by some random hero in the B-plot. That means two things. Ant-Man is amazing, and Doctor Doom kinda sucks. And Doctor Doom isn't supposed to suck. He's Doctor Frickin' Doom. The same goes for Juggernaut. He's unstoppable. The whole movie should be about stopping him. That's how the Juggernaut works. And you may say, yeah, but why does everything have to be exactly like the comics? And I would say it doesn't. But if you're changing something, you should probably have a good reason, especially something as integral to the character as Juggernaut's unstoppability. Like, Spider-Man Homecoming changed the Vulture a lot, but it worked because they managed to maintain the spirit of the character. He's a bald guy with a set of wings who steals things. To be completely honest, the Juggernaut belongs in a movie like X3. Like, a good version without the Phoenix and the unnecessary character deaths and this terrible costume, but a movie where the core X-Men have to team up to stop him. The Juggernaut is the strongest X-Men villain, not the most powerful, but he is raw strength. That is the one thing you need to keep if you're adapting him. Deadpool 2 has no problem diving into the sillier aspects of X-Men comic lore. Best example is Shatterstar. He could have just been some guy with nebulous athletic superpowers, but Deadpool 2 went all in and said that Shatterstar is an alien from the planet Mojo World, and when he is eventually helicoptered, he explodes into green goo. That kind of commitment is something really special about Deadpool 2. It goes for it. If your character has a silly comic backstory, we're using it, because why not? Blob's actual mutant power is that he creates an incredibly strong gravitational field that keeps him connected to the Earth at all times. It's a silly power, but it's also kind of awesome. Problem is, other movies like X-Men Origins Wolverine were scared to get into it. They didn't even bother bringing up that aspect of his power. But it's the perfect kind of goofy but simple power that can work really well in a Deadpool movie. The same cannot be said for Juggernaut. This movie doesn't get anywhere near what makes him awesome. I put out a tweet the other day from @NandoVMovies, please follow, geez, all these plugs, asking people who didn't already know him from the comics what they learned about Juggernaut from the movies. Who is he? What are his powers? What's his deal? And I got a lot of good answers. Most people know that he's related to Professor X as the worst stepbrother since Adam Scott, and most people know that he is unstoppable even though he is frequently stopped in these movies. As far as his deal, most people think the Juggernaut is just a mutant who uses his powers to fight the X-Men, which is almost right. But Juggernaut isn't a mutant. He's so much better. In the comics, Kane Marco just happened upon the altar to a space demon named Sidorak, and when he touched the crimson gem of Sidorak, he was transformed into an unstoppable Juggernaut. That's where he gets the name, the powers, the outfit, a space demon. It's awesome. So like, back to the Doom analogy. Imagine if Doctor Doom in his hypothetical movie wasn't a genius scientist wizard dictator, but was just a businessman with electricity powers. Juggernaut wasn't anywhere near that bad, but he does deserve a movie where he gets to shine, where he gets to be Juggernaut. And if you can just sub Juggernaut out for Blob and have the same movie, but better, that isn't doing the Juggernaut justice. Alright, so that's my change to Deadpool 2. I hope you enjoyed it, and listen, if you didn't, I get it. I know know a lot of people liked the movie's use of the Juggernaut, and like I said, you're not wrong. This just, in my opinion, was a way to make the movie a little bit more interesting while preserving Juggernaut for future X-Men movies, since the studio doesn't usually reuse non-Magneto villains that often. As always, thank you to my patrons. You guys are the best. If you want to see your name up here, get access to videos early and other cool stuff, throw in a buck or two at patreon.com/NandoVMovies. I honestly really appreciate it. Also, subscribe to my podcast, Mostly Nitpicking. There's actually an episode that we did on Deadpool 2 a couple months ago that goes into a lot more detail on our thoughts about things like the movie's use of cameos, character death, and time travel. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and wherever you get your podcasts. And finally, most importantly, subscribe to my channel, watch other videos. I've got some cool stuff I'm working on I think you guys are really going to like that should be coming up in the next month or two. Spoiler alert, it might be that thing everyone's always asking me about. And finally, you can find me on Facebook and Twitter. I am at NandoVMovies. That's all I've got. I'll see you next time.